Thank you very much. I'm grateful to the Ambassador and European for involving Mumbai first in the Global Covenant of Mayors, which is the largest global alliance for city climate leadership across the globe. This is a powerful response to climate change from cities around the world. The cities, I believe, are represented from 6 continents and 142 countries, and in a total representing 1 billion people. Cities are the front line of climate change, but they are also uniquely positioned to lower emissions. And I think doing this thing together with the conference that we've had today is a very appropriate occasion. Now, I'm delighted the last conference, Mumbai joined the Covenant of Mayors, the agreement was signed there. So I'm not going to take much time, as I've been told, the time short. And with these few introductions, I'm glad that we are associated with this. I'm very happy to be associated. I'll pass on to the Ambassador to tell us what the program is now and what the plan is for the present. Over to you, Ambassador. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. Thanks a lot. It's been a pleasure to be associated with you and with Mumbai first for a number of years now. Well, I think I can be pretty short in my presentation because I think the introductory section was quite extensive and all the important points have already been raised. But I think we all realize that even if all the different pledges made at COP26 were realized, we still have considerable work to be done to make sure that the target of keeping global warming below 1.5 degrees is respected. As of now, we are not yet on track. That's important to underscore. Experts estimate that as of today, we are on path for a global warming between 1.8 degrees Celsius and 2.4. And the speaker who opened the session today made it very clear that even small changes can actually lead to catastrophic consequences. So we need to act now and we need to act globally. And I think that India and the European Union together can make a difference. And we are actually already working together through, for instance, the India Clean Energy and Climate Partnership, which was adopted a few years ago in 2016, to discuss a number of issues very relevant for our efforts against global warming. Energy efficiency, renewables, smart grids, green hydrogen. Climate mitigation and climate adaptation need to go hand in hand. It's particularly important. Adaptation is particularly important in the south of the world, and the Global Covenant of Mayors, I think it's a very relevant initiative that can help in addressing the impact of climate change over cities. So today's conference very rightly focuses on how to make cities more resilient. Those who live in coastal cities around the world are increasingly exposed to a variety of potential risks. So we need to look forward. We need to create agile and resilient urban planning, and resilience will be a key consideration in the way we look at the management of coastal areas in the future. Well-planned and early adaptation can help in protecting people, assets, and nature. And adaptation is also key in terms of international cooperation. So here, I'm glad to recognize the important flagship initiative launched by the government of India with the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, focusing precisely on resilience of infrastructure such as transport, energy, but also the digital infrastructure to keep our cities up and running also under adverse circumstances. So the European Union has become a member of the CDRI last year, and we have decided to contribute with 5 million to the IRIS project for disaster resilience in small island developing states. In addition to climate and energy partnership, we have also endorsed a connectivity partnership, which is with India, which is about looking for quality infrastructure which is sustainable fiscally, socially, and environmentally. And this bilateral connectivity partnership has been further reinforced now through the adoption by the European Union of the global gateway strategy. So let me conclude here by underscoring that the EU and India are natural partners in ensuring that the global green transition is clean and inclusive. So we need to ensure the implementation of the Paris Agreement, we need to reduce our emissions, and we also need to increase our resilience. And that's more important than ever, particularly for our coastal cities. So Mumbai first has played a very significant role in the past few years and has offered a substantial contribution to this effect. So let me thank Mumbai first and Mr. Nayar for that and for taking the initiative of this event today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ostudo, for the motivational special address. May I now invite Dr. Ronald Holt, who is connected with the video conferencing. He is the Senior Advisor DG Regio EU Commission, and he will say about the latest EU urban policy developments. Thank you so much. Over to you, Dr. Ronald Holt.
Good morning from Brussels. Good afternoon in Mumbai. I would like to take this opportunity to warmly thank the organizers for this opportunity to speak to you about latest developments in EU urban development policy, and this will be followed, of course, by the presentation by my colleague, Mr. Karidi, on specifically the GCoM dimension, which is a complementary aspect of our activities. As was said, I come from the Director General for Regional and Urban Development Policy, and just like I was listening to in the introductory session to this important conference, it's clear that there is a new dynamic behind urban development policy, and part of that new dynamic, of course, is to address the challenge of climate change and to promote adaptation and mitigation. The key policy in the EU supporting investment in the transformation of our urban areas is the EU's regional and urban development policy. In particular, we act in support of the overriding priority of the European Union at the present time, which is known, as many of you will know, as the Green Deal. This means major investment in cities and regions to achieve a climate neutral and low carbon future. That's the overarching aim. To do this, we've created a new policy objective in EU regional and urban policy, which goes under the heading of a Europe closer to the citizens. But what that means in practice is that the priority has shifted towards the territorial dimension. That is to say, through the involvement of the authorities at the sub-EU and the sub-national level in the cities and in the regions. They are now being supported in the production of integrated sustainable urban development strategies prepared at the relevant level with the involvement of the local authorities and whatever territorial bodies exist in our different member states with an interest in this. So we have this new move towards decentralization and the direct implementation of policies by the people who are most affected by the outcomes. Later this year, we are establishing what is known as the European Urban Initiative, EUI, to support sustainable urban development across the EU. It will improve capacities in cities in the design and implementation of sustainable urban strategies, policies and practices in an integrated and participative way. The initiative will finance innovative actions, allowing experimentation and the development of smart and transferable and scalable solutions to urban challenges. It will also promote knowledge sharing and the capitalization of results for the benefit of policymakers and practitioners at all levels. The background to much of our actions remains that of the EU Urban Agenda, which was adopted by our member states in 2016, of 14 priority themes, about to be extended to 16. And it has the underlying objective of promoting better regulation, more funding, and better knowledge acquisition on the part of urban authorities across the European Union. Key, of course, to the urban agenda is to mobilise stakeholders in working together in partnerships on the different themes of the EU urban agenda. And today, these themes include essential elements as we move forward, such as promoting sustainable energy transition, climate adaptation, and urban mobility. The partnerships involve cities, member states, the Commission, and other EU institutions and stakeholders. And from the point of view of our friends in India, the importance of these partnerships is that they are generating a fairly vast resource of experience and policy practice, which of course we can then share with our colleagues and friends across the world. Many of you will come from large organisations, be they in the public and private sectors, and you will know that one of the challenges of working in this context is that it can be difficult to achieve the coordination between the different departments, the different organisations and sub-organisations responsible, the so-called joined-up thinking, or overcoming the problem of working together in the silos. And of course, we in the European Union, and specifically in the European Commission, are no different. And therefore, part of our efforts for the future are to seek to work more closely and a more complementary fashion with our colleagues in the other departments of the EU. And of course, you will hear from one of our close colleagues in a few minutes. But another initiative I would like specifically to draw your attention to is the creation of what is called the EU Mission on Climate Neutral and Smart Cities. This cities mission, which was launched at the end of last year, aims at giving a local dimension to the global European Green Deal through a bottom-up approach. It will deliver at least 100 climate neutral and smart cities by 2030 in the EU, and seek to ensure that these cities act as experimentation and innovation hubs to enable all European cities to follow suit by 2050. The Commission has already announced the 100 cities selected, which represent a huge diversity of experience from across the EU. And the result is that, again, we will be developing a fund of knowledge, which we hope will be of use to our friends and colleagues across the world. Let me turn to this aspect very quickly as I conclude. I've spoken about how we're developing and deepening our urban development policy with a view to contributing notably to adaptation and mitigation in the face of climate change. But we also increasingly have a very important external dimension. And I'm very pleased even virtually, as it were, to have this opportunity to catch up again with Mr. Narinder Nair, who we worked with closely about half a dozen years ago in a European project which was known as World Cities, where Mumbai was one of our key partners, and Mumbai First were one of our key technical support facilities helping us to achieve this cooperation. Out of World Cities, we developed the International Urban Cooperation Programme, which as of last year became the International Urban and Regional Cooperation Programme. which puts cities from the EU in partnership with cities across the globe. And we have a fairly substantial program, I would say, in the East, in India, in China, and in Southeast Asia and Australia, and also in Japan and South Korea. In fact, it's probably our largest centre of interest for this international cooperation between cities. It has the aim of helping our EU cities to achieve the EU urban agenda by learning from cities across the world, but also for the realisation of the new urban agenda of the United Nations, to which we are all signatories as a national and international priority. At the moment, then, we have 10 EU cities and 14 Indian cities working together under the IURC, under this cooperation programme, where climate adaptation is one of the cross-cutting themes of the cooperation. I know, of course, that quite naturally, and our Indian colleagues and counterparts in the cities have their own priorities, which of course are totally respected in this programme of equals, for example, covering areas such as flood management. But even when you address an issue of flood management, you do not have to dig very deeply before you realise that there is a cross-cutting climate adaptation and mitigation aspect to it. I'm also pleased to say that Maharashtra is engaged in the IURC, building on our experience under World Cities 5 or 6 years ago. And it's with that I would like to conclude by wishing this initiative, which is now in its serious implementation phase in 2022, all the best. And I hope that in that context I will not always be addressing you virtually, but will have the opportunity to visit India and see what is happening on the ground. And with that, I would like once again to thank the organisers and my colleagues in the European Union delegation for their support in my presence virtually here today. And I look forward to hearing the remarks of my good colleague, Mr. Karidi of DG Klima. Thank you very much.
Yeah, may I now request Mr. Paolo Caridi, Policy Coordinator, Relations with India, DG Klima, to highlight upon latest European EU urban policy developments and role of European Commission and importance of GCoM globally and in Asia. Mr. Caridi, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. And I'm representing today the Director General for Climate Action of the European Commission, and following my colleagues in the EU delegation in Brussels presented already part of the thing I wanted to mention, so my intervention should be relatively short. And I'm really sorry not to be there and joining also the hope to be coming to India and to Mumbai as soon as possible. So today, it's my honor to be here to present this launch event of the EU-funded project to support the Global Covenant of Major Asia. As it was already mentioned by many, cities are already leading the effort to green transition, be it adaptation, but also mitigation to climate change. And I think in the last year, this has become even more apparent. And that's the reason why we are focusing a lot on cooperation with cities. But what we realize is that in many countries, the right level for the EU to cooperate is not necessarily central government level, but there is a lot of potential to cooperate with cities and with regions who can demonstrate that action do work on the ground and in fact are good for the cities themselves. Obvious examples already mentioned, fighting against the climate change at city level, having better adaptation plan city level, for instance, reduces water pollution, and at the end of the day make cities a better place for people. So that's why we, as the European Commission, we are increasing our support to cities globally to help work on energy and climate change. Now, a few words on the Global Covenant of Mayors, if you allow me. This is a project we started already in 2008 in Europe to support the local authority to work on climate and energy. Since then, the number of participating cities, both within Europe but also globally, has been increasing in a rather spectacular way. A couple of speakers mentioned already the number of 11,000 cities, 11,500 cities, and growing, which are participating to this project. I think one figure which is even more impressive is that this covers about 1 billion people. So it's truly huge, and in fact, it is estimated that the potential for reduction, and I'm only covering the mitigation slide now, will be to offer global covenant of mayor is to reduce global emission by 1.9 gigatons of CO2 compared to business as usual. So that's quite considerable. And by 2050, this is even supposed to double to 3.8 gigatons. So that's basically 1/4 of total urban emission abatement potential. So rather considerable. The project we are financing or funding as the European Union, so we support to Global Covenant of Major Asia. It's a project which will be implemented in a number of countries across Asia, India of course, but also China, Japan, Republic of Korea, Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, and Thailand. So this, in addition to supporting member cities in those countries, it also seeks to strengthen the link with the European Union, including helping us basically to implement the external dimension of the European Green Deal, as was already mentioned by my colleagues. Well, the location of a launch project has been chosen very well, I believe. The city of Mumbai is a city with which the EU has a large and very rich cooperation. Also a very big city, which has a population which is basically comparable to the population of an average European country. Mumbai has been a member since when we had the first climate conference in 2020. We now have 24 cities in India which are participating to GCoM, and this year Kolkata also became a member, as was mentioned. So the Mumbai Climate Action Plan has been prepared with technical assistance of the C40 and the World Research Institute, and the EU delegation, together with C40, has also entered into collaboration on contribution to the implementation of the Mumbai Climate Action Plan, with support by this very project, EU-funded GCoM. For the European Commission and for DG Climate Action in particular, it is very important that we make the cooperation with Indian cities and other cities in Asia as concrete as possible to strengthen monitoring, planning, implementation of reducing emission, and, very importantly, increasing the resilience of cities. So with this, I will end my contribution, and again, hoping to be able to see you in person soon. Thank you very much.
Our collaboration with C40. The EU and C40 has kind of came together to work on the Kolkata Climate Action Plan. I have my colleague Mr. Nikhil Kulkarni on behalf of C40 to speak about C40's role in this for these two Mumbai and Kolkata's potential collaborations along with EU. Nikhil.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Ashish. Good afternoon, everybody. Dignitaries on the dais, nobody's there, but participants. This is my honor to share a few words with you regarding C40 and collaborations for the Mumbai Climate Action Plan and for the future collaborations in Kolkata as well. So for those who don't know about C40 or not well aware about the C40's role in these climate actions, I will just highlight the role. C40 is a network of about 100 world-leading cities who are committed to climate actions. C40 cities are actually supporting all these cities for the inclusive, science-based, evidence-based and collaborative approach for their climate actions. We are trying to make healthy, resilient and equitable communities within all these 100 cities, and not only 100 but other cities as well. Why cities we are focusing? I just wanted to share few statistics, because these cities consume only 2%, or they are spread over only 2% of the landmass of the globe. But at the same time, they are contributing 75% of the emissions, GHG emissions. They are consuming 70% of the global energy, and at the same time, they are contributing to the climate change. But even though they are contributing to climate change, the solutions lies within the cities. Cities are very diverse. They are powerhouses. They are economic hubs for the climate actions, and they can actually lead the climate action and address this climate crisis. C40 cities are driving green and just recovery from the pandemic, and also supporting to cut emissions by 50% by 2030. In this particular region in India, we have 5 member cities, Mumbai, Kolkata, Chennai, Bangalore and Delhi. And the uniqueness of C40 is the leadership standards. We deal our members with the minimum requirement of leadership standards, so that we don't charge any membership fees, but we expect that cities should meet our leadership standards and they can lead all these climate actions throughout their journey. I'm very glad to inform that C40 is supporting all these cities through various initiatives. For example, we are supporting through GPS GHG inventories, GPS compliant GHG inventories, then CAP reviews, climate action plan reviews for the cities. We have own climate action planning framework for the cities. Then technical assistance, peer-to-peer exchange, capacity building, knowledge platforms, also advocacy and diplomacy for the cities. And we have dedicated networks, sectoral networks to engage and bring all cities together to discuss sectoral commitments and sectoral actions and challenges. At the same time, we have few declarations as well that cities are committing to certain actions in the climate change world. And I'm very glad to say that Mumbai is one of the active cities in this region. Mumbai has signed our urban nature declaration and committed to increase and enhance their green cover and permeable surface in the city. At the same time, Mumbai has joined several other initiatives of C40, like Women for Climate Action, where city is trying to enhance women participation in the climate action. And also, Mumbai is one of the pilot city in 11 cities that has joined climate budgeting pilot of C40. I can say this Mumbai Climate Action Plan itself is a great example of collaboration, where state and Mumbai led the journey, but at the same time, partners like WRI and C40 came together to deliver this climate action plan, which is science-based and evidence-based. So, with this note, I just wanted to emphasize that the MCAP preparation was the one part, but the major and crucial part is implementation of the Mumbai Climate Action Plan, because that particular action plan has several initiatives, like 6 verticals are there, and again each vertical is equipped with several actions. So the implementation itself is a great challenge for cities like Mumbai. I remember while preparing this Mumbai Climate Action Plan, almost more than 26 parastitial agencies were involved, like for the data collection or just having consultations with them. So you can imagine the complexity of preparing this climate action plan, and at the same time complexity, as our Honorable Minister mentioned, that they need to deal with complex institutional structure. Even for making one footpath, they need to consider 42 agencies. So that is a challenge in implementation this MCAP. So in terms of collaboration, the mainstreaming of climate action is very important, and we are really looking forward to collaborate with GCoM and EU for the challenges like adaptation measures in the cities, because Mumbai is very vulnerable for flooding and cyclones. So we are looking forward for that, and at the same time, for these adaptation measures, we are looking for finances. innovative financial instruments we are looking for. So the collaboration will be in that sense very crucial for the city. We are also working with Kolkata, and I'm very glad to inform that GCoM and C40 have joined together, and we are in the final stage of launching our collaboration for the Kolkata Climate Action Plan. So we are hoping that all C40 cities, and not only C40 cities, but all the cities in India and even the globe should develop their climate action plans to lead this climate action journey. I'm very glad to share that Maharashtra is the only state in world that has 43 cities joined Cities Race to Zero, the single state in world. So we are not only staying with Mumbai, but we are looking, or even state is looking for the other 42 cities in the state, how we can prepare GHG inventories for them and how they can lead their journey. So with this note, I will just stop here, and I would like to welcome this GCoM and EU for the partnership with Mumbai and Kolkata, and really looking forward for the continued engagement with the state and city of Mumbai. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Kulkarni. I thank all our panel members for telling us a little bit more about GCoM. And now, since while we're all here, it's time to officially launch EU-funded GCoM with all of you. I request Mr. Narinder Nair to please join us back on stage. I also request Mr. Ugo Astuto and Mr. Edwin Kukuk, First Councillor, EU Delegation, to please join us on stage. Can we have the folders on stage, please? So, ladies and gentlemen, that is the Global Covenant of Mayors and Climate and Energy, GCoM, for all of you. Can we please give them a big hand? Thank you, gentlemen, for doing the honors. I'm going to request you all to kindly take your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to move into our next session, which deals with Consul General Climate Discussions and Interactions. We have Consul Generals from across the world of some of the most prominent countries and cities who have joined us here today. Moderating this session is Mr. Sanjay Ubale, IAS, Executive Board Member, Mumbai First. I'm going to invite on stage our esteemed speakers. Please put your hands together for Mr. Agus Prihatin Saptono, Consul General, Consulate General of Indonesia. I also request Consul General, Consulate General of Sri Lanka, Dr. Valsan Vethude, to please join us on stage. Consul and Consulate General of the Kingdom of Netherlands, Mr. Arnoud Besseling. Consul General, Consulate General of Singapore, Mr. Cheong Ming Foon. Consul General, Consulate General of Japan, Dr. Fukahori Yasukata. It's time for a global perspective. We have our esteemed panelists on stage. Now that we've got our moderator and our panel members on stage, I am going to let them take over the floor.
Good afternoon, everyone. So welcome to this session. which consists of panelists who are basically consul generals and consuls from some of the world, where some of the world cities reside. And we have approximately 45 minutes time with them. But it's also great to have a lot of you in the audience. I can see Devi Goenka. I wished him in the morning. One of the sustained warriors as far as the city of Mumbai is concerned. There's several others who are here, and I've fought with him and he's fought with me in the past. But it's good that we are friends back again and working towards a similar cause that we all cherish. I would just like to welcome all my friends here on the dais. We have very little time and a lot to talk. So I'm not really going to spend too much time on introduction. I'm going to start with the Consul General of Sri Lanka, because I believe you have to go after this, right? So I'm going to start with you. I'm going to request you to make an opening remark of about 4 or 5 minutes, and then thereafter, if you feel that you have to leave, maybe you can, but it might be a useful idea if you can stay back and answer some of the questions. But I'm going to request you to start with your opening remarks. Over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. At onset, let me thank the Mumbai First for giving me this opportunity to speak on a subject that has been getting vociferously debated in the global arena. Though I'm not an expert on this subject, I'm very happy to talk about it, as the climate crisis is the easiest subject because we all know its causes, its consequences, and solutions. However, the reality is that though we know everything about the climate crisis, we have already made the climate crisis as one of the hardest issues as we still grapple to treat the crisis as a crisis, and moreover,
1 minute. Thank you very much for your thoughts. I would really.
No, I have to meet some other appointment, so I'm leaving. Right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll now invite the Consul General for Indonesia, Mr. Agus Saptano, to make his initial remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Sanjay, Honorable Consul General, who are also today's panelists, dear committee official and member of Mumbai First, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Namaste, selamat siang, and very good afternoon to you all. Today, I'm in front of you, we talking about the climate change. We already hear directly in the opening session. And now I would like to begin with to share a brief information about Indonesia and its commitment to the climate change. Indonesia is the world's largest archipelagic state, consisting of more than 17,500 islands with more around 81,000 kilometers of coastline, a population around 279 million in 2022, and the largest economy in Southeast Asia. Indonesia is also one of the largest biodiversity and rainforest countries in the world. However, due to its archipelagic signature, Indonesia is highly vulnerable to climate change impacts, including extreme events such as floods and also drought and long-term change from sea level rise, shift in rainfall patterns, and increasing temperature. Ladies and gentlemen, government of Indonesia is committed to reducing the country's GHG emission, the National Action Plan for Greenhouse Gas Emission Reduction. Indonesia set an emission reduction target on 26% compared to business as usual with domestic effort or up to 41% with the international support under the reference emission level by 2020. Post-2020 emission reduction targets has been set at 29% of the reference emission level by 2030, with an unconditional target and up to 41% with international support. In support of this effort, the Indonesian government has promulgated relevant legal and policy instruments, including the National Action Plan of GHG emission reduction. For climate change adaptation, the country's medium-term strategy is to reduce risk from climate change on all development sectors like agriculture, water, energy security, forestry, maritime, fisheries, health and public service, infrastructure, and urban system by 2030. We already have a national strategy and also already ratified Paris Agreement and established the commitment through its national determined contribution, as well as we have completed the third national communication NC3 in 2017 and also second biennial update report 2018. Now, we would like to talk about specific issue on climate change, especially about the threat of sea level rise, since we have experience, so I would like to share with you. Sea level rise threatens significant physical change to coastal zone around the world, including, of course, Indonesia. Indonesia is particularly exposed to sea level rise, with the country ranked fifth highest in terms of population inhabiting the lower elevation coastal zone. More analysis of Indonesia coastal flood risk is needed, which also takes into account land subsidence rate. Sea level rise is not just a threat due to long-term encroachment on coastal areas, but also due to the projected increase in the frequency of extreme sea level events. For example, Jakarta, the capital of Indonesia, has been described as the world's most rapidly sinking city, and at the current state, it is estimated that 1/3 of the city could be submerged by 2050. Ladies and gentlemen, to cope with the current situation, Indonesia central and regional governments have decided to build Jakarta giant seawall to prevent the worst circumstances that could happen. Through the National Capital Integrated Coastal Development, NCICD, constructed a giant seawall in the north of Jakarta Bay as an effort to protect the capital city from floods. Large lagoons will be built within the walls to accommodate the water flow from 13 rivers in Jakarta water reservoir, including the construction of the giant seawall in the north of Jakarta Bay as an effort to protect the capital city from floods. Giant City Wall Jakarta is part of the massive coastal development project in Jakarta, Indonesia, which commenced in 2014 and expected to be materialized by 2025. Ladies and gentlemen, what is the significant role of Jakarta Giant Seawall? As you may aware, Jakarta lies on a low, flat basin 23 feet, around 7 meters, above sea level. However, about 40% of that, particularly the northern areas, is below sea level. The project, which partnered with the Dutch companies, was designed to revitalizing the coastline and, most importantly, offering a vision of the future for Indonesian capital. This giant seawall will be built and take 10 to 15 years before construction of this wall is realized. Cost of the project is estimated about $40 billion. The giant seawall will also become a center of urban development, which will be built by public-private partnership investment. Urban development includes upmarket offices and housing, as well as low-cost housing, green areas, and beaches. Besides that, our government in Indonesia is currently synergizing collaboration with petabencana.id, an application platform that provides real-time disaster maps using crowdsourced reporting and government agency validations. Ladies and gentlemen, on this occasion, I would like to thank you all for your kind attention and look forward to discuss in the session of discussion. However, maybe I have a meeting around 2 o'clock. Maybe before 2 I should leave. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Saptono. I think the important point that he made here was how Jakarta is trying to mitigate the risk that it faces as a result of climate change. And I think one of the things that you talked about is building a giant seawall to protect the city against sea level rise. Now, the pioneers in this particular technology has been none other than the Netherlands, and we have the Consul General here from Netherlands, Mr. Arnold Besseling, and he will talk about what is it that Netherlands has learned, because you already faced what the world is going to face in the years to come, and what is it that you've already done, and what are the kind of technologies that you're collaborating with some of the other countries going forward, not only with Indonesia, but some of the other countries as well. Over to you. Whenever you feel that. Thank you. I would request the audience also, in case they have any questions, particularly with regard to some of the solutions that the world is looking at, it would be a great time to ask some of the Consul Generals here.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. it is time for lunch, I notice. So let me start with a little pop quiz to get some livelihood in the room. So maybe someone in the audience can tell me what the expertise of our king is in the Netherlands. Please. Water, yeah, water management, and rightly so, because if you visit the Netherlands, there are a couple of things you see a lot. So you see 17 million bicycles, and besides that, you see a lot of water. Yeah? We have the North Sea on the western side of the Netherlands. We have lakes, we have canals. If you visit Amsterdam, you will see the waterways on which trade has been done. In the Netherlands, we have a love-hate relationship with water. Water gave us prosperity. We traveled the seas, the oceans, to Indonesia, to Japan. We settled trade routes to India. We landed in Kerala and in Calcutta. Water gives us pleasure, right? As tourists, you go to Amsterdam, you go on to the canals and you see the Dutch heritage surrounding you. But we always also have a hate relationship with water. In 1953, we had the largest human or nature disaster in the Netherlands, the flooding. It was a western storm together with an extremely high tide, and a large part of the Netherlands, which is below sea level, got flooded. As a result of that, we started adapting. So we constructed the so-called Delta Works, which consist of 13 massive infrastructural projects that protect us from the seawater coming towards us. Parts of the Netherlands are almost 6.5 meters below sea level, so you can imagine if the dikes or levees break, we will be under a massive amount of water. The Delta Works are one of the first adaptations we made towards climate change. And it's supposed to bring safety to the Dutch inhabitants, but if we move forward a little bit, the end of 2021 we had terrible floodings in not only Germany and Belgium, but also in the southern part of the Netherlands. And this time it did not come from the sea, but this time it came from the River Rhine that comes into our country from the east side. This is just to give you some background on the experience that we have as the Netherlands. We have been managing water for decades, and we have the knowledge, and we would very much like to share it with our partners. If you look at the Dutch climate policy, there are 3 elements that we are focusing on. 1, cooperation, not only in the Netherlands on national level, but also within the EU with our EU partners, and globally with our global partners like Indonesia, like Singapore, but also India, of course. The second one is adaptation. We take concrete measures in the Netherlands to prevent our people from getting hurt by the means of climate change. And the third element is mitigation. We are trying to decrease the amount of energy use in the Netherlands. We are stimulating the use of alternative fuels instead of fossil fuels, and we are decreasing the emissions in infrastructure, in the industry, in the energy sector, in the agricultural sector, and yes, we have a lot of experience. We know what the issues are. We like to share our knowledge. I think the only issue that we really have is time. So I'm going to end it here. And hopefully we can have a discussion and go into some of our concrete projects that we do in India. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I think there's a lot to discuss with you after the initial round. I'm going to invite the Consul General for Singapore to come and talk about his experiences about his country. As we all know, Singapore is an island nation. It has, interestingly, it's increased its size by almost 20% through reclamation. How exactly is the reclamation a part of your strategy to protect itself, or are there any other measures as well that Singapore is taking to prevent the effects of climate change?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everyone. My thanks to the chairman of Mumbai First, Mr. Narendra Nair, also for inviting me to share the panel with my consular corps colleagues on such an important existential issue. And I say existential, as some of our other speakers have already said, because climate change impacts coastal regions and cities disproportionately. And this includes here in Mumbai, of course, and also Singapore. And 30% of Singapore is less than 5 meters above sea level. And most of Singapore, if you have been there before, is very flat, 15 meters above sea level. But we have recorded a mean sea level increase between 1.2 millimeters to 1.7 millimeters annually since 1975. So flooding and storm surges will become hugely destructive if we don't do anything about it. Last year in August, for example, there was a flash flood, and for that one day in August, 250 millimeters of rain fell, the highest ever for the month of August. So, the inescapable fact is that Singapore is a small, low-lying island city-state. But we are also an alternative energy disadvantaged country because we face constraints on space for renewable energy solutions like wind and hydropower, and to a certain extent, solar as well. Even potable water is a challenge for us. We've had to import some of our drinking water since independence in 1965. So in the face of this, what can we do? Our answer has been to weave sustainability into our development story, and by seeing climate change as less of a threat and more of an opportunity, we've been able to reframe our perspective. So let me share with you some highlights, and I can only do some highlights of what we have been doing. Firstly, Singapore is now one of the world's densest but greenest cities. Our goal is to be a city in nature, restoring nature into our urban environment. Through careful and integrated urban planning and development, our green coverage has actually grown from around 35% in 1986 to almost 50% today. Last year, our government launched the Singapore Green Plan 2030, which charts ambitious and concrete targets under 5 key pillars that strengthen Singapore's commitments under the UN's 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda and Paris Agreement. Under this plan, over 80% of our buildings by gross floor area will be green by 2030, but a big part is actually on the power sector. Some 40% of our emissions come from that sector. And while we, as I mentioned, we don't have much land for renewable energy production, we do have some inland water bodies, the reservoirs for our drinking water. Now, on one of them, over an area covering 45 football fields, we operate one of the world's largest floating solar farms. It produces 60 megawatt peak electricity. And this reduces 32 kilotons of carbon emissions annually, which is something like taking 7,000 cars off the roads annually. And incidentally, the company that built and operates it is called Sembcorp. They have several renewable energy projects right here across India. Secondly, we aim to be thought leaders in crafting and enacting sustainable development policies. We were the first in Southeast Asia to introduce a carbon pricing mechanism in 2018. Today, relevant businesses pay Singapore $5 per ton of emission, CO2 emission, and that will increase to $10 per ton next year and $15 per ton in 2030. This policy was intentionally designed to scale up gradually, allowing our businesses adequate time to enact a transition while incentivizing emissions reductions across all sectors. Third, we have been an active and constructive player in international climate change negotiations. Singapore co-facilitated the ministerial discussions on implementation guidelines for Article 6 of the Paris Agreement on Carbon Market Rules at COP26, which resulted in a positive outcome after 2 failed attempts at previous COPs. Singapore has also been a strong supporter of the Paris Agreement since its inception. And in 2020, we submitted our enhanced 2030 nationally determined contributions along with our long-term low emissions development strategy. Now, even though we are a tropical country, we have been an observer in the Arctic Council since 2013. as the Arctic is a barometer of climate change. We have consistently supported the sustainable development of the Arctic region through participation in dialogues and work groups. Fourthly, we have provided technical assistance and capacity building courses to other countries through our Climate Action Package under the Singapore Cooperation Program. Through this, we have shared our experience in areas such as the green economy, urban planning, and flood and water management. More than 137,000 government officials from all over the world have benefited thus far. Fifth, recognizing the transboundary nature of climate change, Singapore partners other countries to advance global action towards climate change. We are working closely with partners such as Australia, Chile, New Zealand, and the US on emerging low-carbon technologies such as low-carbon hydrogen and carbon capture utilization and storage. We have commenced negotiations on a bilateral green economy agreement with Australia, which will be a world-first agreement that combines trade, economic, and environment objectives. Singapore is also working actively to tap low-carbon energy beyond our shores. I mentioned a floating solar farm we have earlier. Another Singapore company has teamed up with the authorities in Batam, an Indonesian island near Singapore, to build what will be the world's largest floating solar farm spanning 1,600 hectares with an expected output of 2.2 gigawatts. The electricity is planned for usage in both Batam and Singapore. And in addition, there are trials to import electricity from Malaysia and Indonesia, and we hope that these and other regional arrangements will serve as a pathfinder towards an ASEAN-wide grid where low-carbon electricity is traded freely between ASEAN countries. So we've done all this and we'll continue to do that. Looking ahead, there are three areas which we see we can play a constructive role in. First, as one of the world's major global financial centers, Singapore is well placed to be a green financing hub. Green financing in Singapore saw a major surge last year, with proceeds raised by green bonds doubling to over $6 billion last year. Singapore also accounted for about half of the ASEAN region's green bond issuances and loan originations in 2020. Our central bank, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, has come up with a Green Finance Action Plan, which supports the mainstreaming of green and sustainable financing, establishment of green finance centers of excellence, and climate-resilient investment strategies. Secondly, we have just agreed to a World Bank request for Singapore to anchor an international effort that aims to make the international trade in carbon credits more transparent and trustworthy. Called the Climate Warehouse Initiative, this aims to connect the various carbon credit registries in the world. Up to now, these registries have been operated by disparate groups like governments, NGOs, or private firms. They differ in terms of governance rules and technology systems. Information on carbon credits can thus be potentially inaccurate or even double-counted. It is therefore crucial for the underlying data system to have high integrity, or businesses will not have the confidence to invest at scale. So the Climate Warehouse Initiative aims to achieve this by becoming the global platform for more transparent reporting and closer tracking of carbon credits. Thirdly and relatedly, another opportunity we see is for us to shape the development of industry standards. Singapore is an active member of two international standards setting bodies, namely the International Organization for Standardization, ISO, and the International Electrotechnical Commission at the technical and governance levels. We have had new ISO standards in the areas of water efficiency, and we have shared our best practices with other countries under that rubric. Now, I realize that what I've outlined are not sexy topics of the day like EVs, important as those are, and we do encourage that. But I submit that the policies and projects that I have mentioned are truly real-world sustainability applications for mitigating climate change in a systematic way. And I also hope you'll agree that sustainability and development are not at odds with each other, and instead, through domestic actions and the spirit of global cooperation, we can create new possibilities for a more sustainable future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Consul General. I trust Singapore for creating an opportunity out of a crisis. Thanks for sharing your insights into what you're trying to do. I'm going to now invite the Consul General from Japan Mr. Fukaori Yasukata. He himself is an environmentalist, and he's going to talk about what Japan is doing as far as their coastal cities are concerned. In some ways, Tokyo is somewhat similar to Mumbai, and what you're doing for Tokyo would be of great interest to us. Over to you.
Thank you very much. And it's a little bit awkward being the last speaker in the morning before lunch, because I understand that everyone in this room is very hungry because the process is delayed by 1 hour. So I understand that all over audience in this room wishes me to finish as soon as possible so that they can go to lunch. But Japan needs an equal opportunity with other countries, so that I wish that if you could be patient for another 5 minutes, I need to speak about my experience. First of all, I need to thank the Mumbai First for organizing this wonderful event. This is really timely, and this is really, really important agenda for any of us to consider and study. And also, I'd like to express my utmost gratitude and appreciation to the government of Maharashtra and the city of Mumbai for their passion and actions taken to address all these important issues. Yes, global climate change is the really, really important and pressing issues, as Aditya Thackeray has rightly said. I'm very happy to be here because, as the moderator has just been said, that I hold a PhD in the area of environmental economics. And my master's degree was environmental science, so that I have a substantial study and research in this field in my life. And also, as a diplomat of Japan, I have participated in some of the international negotiations about those environmental and climate issues at the United Nations meeting in New York, Geneva, and other places. Based on my experience as a diplomat, I can say that workable international agreement can prevent the increase of CO2 emissions. As previous speakers said, that we experienced the surge of CO2 emissions during the past 25 or 30 years. And then Japan, EU members, and USA and other OECD member countries have been culpable for discharging CO2 for the past many years. But do you know how much during the past 25 years the OECD member states, including Japan, have increased the total amount of emission of CO2? Does anyone know? Well, you may have an impression that OECD member states, industrial countries, have increased the emission for the past 25 years, but actually we haven't. Almost no increase from OECD member states. And then so that past 25 years increase happened elsewhere. Particularly China increased its emissions. China was about a few percent portion back about 30 years ago, but now it holds about 35% of entire emissions. And then per capita emission of China is larger than most of the EU member states nowadays. But I'm not actually criticizing China. China needed economic development, and China was not bound by any international agreement, so that it was okay for China. Nobody can actually blame China or other countries. What I wanted to say was that if you have a workable international agreement, you can successfully contain the CO2 emissions. OECD member states, Japan, European countries in particular, didn't increase its emissions for the past 25 years because we had an international agreement, legal binding agreements like the Kyoto Protocol. Japan hosted a CO2 COP meeting in 1997 in Kyoto, and then we came to agreement to create a legal binding system called the Kyoto Protocol. In accordance with the agreement made under Kyoto Protocol and the Paris Accord and others, Japan, European states and other countries didn't increase the CO2 emissions for the past 25 years, even though we have increased our GDP twice as much. So we succeeded in doubling our GDP without any increase of CO2 emissions during the first 25 years. So if there is a workable international agreement and framework, we can achieve the reduction of CO2 and economic development at the same time. So that what we need is the workable international agreement, including all partners. For the past 25 years, only some members of OECD's Japan were the participants to the legal binding international agreements. But now we need international agreement and efforts engulfing all countries in the world. Then we can successfully contain the CO2 emissions. I'm quite optimistic by listening to the views this morning, passions and actions taken by the Mumbai city and the Maharashtra government. Maharashtra and Mumbai can be a very good model in the world, showing how local communities can tackle these important issues from local point of view, which can contribute to the containment of climate change in the long run. So that I'm very happy to be here in Mumbai, seeing the efforts made by all the Maharashtra government and then Mumbai government. But now I'd like to talk a little bit about Japan and Mumbai. I have asked the next question for many people, but not many could successfully give me the right answer. In Japan, do you know which city has achieved the lowest per capita emission of CO2 in Japan? Does anybody know the answer? Raise your hand if you know. Okay. It's actually Tokyo. Tokyo is the cosmopolitan city, very large industrial city, but it has achieved the lowest per capita emission of CO2 in Japan. And the one reason, and also in the USA, it's New York. New York also achieved the lowest per capita emission of CO2. By the way, Mr. Saptano, bye-bye. Thank you for your participation. He had a work to do after this one. But anyway, what was that? Yes, New York achieved the lowest per capita emission of CO2 in the USA. And then it is Japan, Tokyo. Do you know the reason why? That's because of the mass transportation system. In Japan, if you come to Japan, you know that we have a network of metro system and train systems. And 10 million passengers per day use trains and metros in Tokyo. 10 million people. And if you travel on trains and metros, those are the EVs. They run on electricity. They do not emit any amount of CO2s. If you drive in cars, private cars, you emit a lot of CO2s. But if you change from cars to mass transportation, metro system or train systems, you can reduce CO2s enormously. That's why the Tokyo and New York, those cities are clean cities. Now, Mumbai has been working on constructing many metro systems. Mr. Srinivas, MMRD, and other people in Maharashtra working very hard to construct metro systems. They have a plan to metro number 1 to metro 11, 12. But if a network of a metro system is completed at Mumbai, it will reduce enormous amount of CO2s in Mumbai. For example, Japan has been working together with the Indian government, MMRD and others, Maharashtra government, to install metro number 3, which runs from Nariman Point to our colony. If this Metro 3 is completed, it can reduce 200,000 passengers per day. 2 lakh passengers move from cars to metro system, which will reduce at least 1 lakh vehicles on the street. It will reduce, not just reduce CO2 emissions, but will reduce traffic jams. And it makes the business efficient. It makes punctual for anybody to travel in Mumbai, so that you can expect the efficiency in economy and the business, and then improvement of quality on environment. If you complete all those network of metro system and the train systems, Japan has been also working together with the government of India and the Maharashtra government to install the high-speed railway system from Mumbai to Ahmedabad. This will also enormously decrease the amount of CO2s, because it's a long-distance journey, reduces the millions of kilometers per day of private cars and travel. We are also building the harbor bridge.
We just have half a minute now.
Okay. Yeah, I spoke maybe a little bit too long. So I finished. So that what Mumbai has been doing is good. So that we need a mass transportation system in order for us to create a better environment in Mumbai. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think the solution that you had suggested is basically introduction of mass transit systems. In fact, the definition of a rich city is where the rich travel by public transport and not by private cars. So that's one lesson that you have from Japan. We have just about one question for which we have time, and I'm going to request maybe Arnaud for you to answer to that question. I don't know if audience have any questions. Otherwise, I have one question to ask. You've been, as I said earlier, you've been pioneers in water management, right? And basically flood prevention and protecting your country against the rising sea levels. But the solutions that you had, at least in the past, have been pretty expensive solutions. You have a very elaborate system of dikes, very expensive systems. Has that technology changed significantly? So what are the new technologies that you're now introducing? And are you collaborating with some of the other countries also in introducing some of these new technologies?
Yes, let me start with the first question. In 1953, it cost us 5 billion euros to construct the Delta Works. I'm not sure with all the inflation what the number is now, but it's very expensive. Besides expensive, it was indeed very innovative. It was, if you see the structures there, they were really the first of their kind, and on the massive scale that we used in the Netherlands. But eventually it comes down to engineering, right? So calling it innovation, of course in those days it was innovation, but every problem, even nowadays, comes down to engineering. And innovation is a tool. And I believe that nowadays, with all the technological innovations here in India, AI, robotics, we can go even further and be even more efficient than we were as the Dutch in the old days. But even so, it protected us for a long time. But now even we need to review the usage of the Delta Works. They're old, they're getting older, and the problems are getting bigger. So we are using the innovative technology, the technologies of today, to see how we can improve the Delta Works, for example. But innovation, this is a massive solution, right? It's a massive solution, but you can do smaller initiatives with less innovation. It starts with making smart usage of your inner cities, for example. I think a solution in Rotterdam for water storage is they created a skate park for youngsters. But the skate park also functions as a water storage when there is heavy rainfall and the normal sewage system cannot get rid of the water fast enough. So the skate park floods, and as soon as the rain stops, the water disappears again. So it's not only technological innovation, but it's also innovation of usage of space. And that's one example in the city.
Thank you. I think we missed an opportunity in the construction of the coastal road, where I think some of the technologies could have been used to prevent the erosion, particularly of the coastal areas on the western side. But maybe that's an aspect of discussion some other time. But since we've already overshot time, I'm not going to come in the way of you and lunch. Thank you very much to all the panelists for being here today and sharing your thoughts. And thank you, audience, for being with us this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ubale, and thank you, esteemed speakers, for this very interesting panel discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to break for lunch now. It's going to be a 15-minute lunch break. I'm going to request you all to join us back inside by 2:20. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a 15-minute lunch break. So I'm going to request all the delegates, we need to keep the time a little bit in check. So please ensure you're back in the ballroom by 2:20.
La noche no se muere. La noche no se mueve. La noche no se mueve.
Gentlemen, I'm going to request everybody to take their seats, all those in the lunch area. If you're done with lunch, please take your seats. We need to start with the next session. We're already running a little late. I request all our delegates and speakers who are in the lunch area, if you are done with lunch, please come and take your seats. We also have a speakers lounge at Jacaranda. So if the speakers would like to meet before the sessions for discussion, can do so. I once again request our delegates and our speakers, we need to start with the next session. If you're done with lunch, please join us back in the ballroom.
no se muere. La noche no se muere.
Our delegates who are outside in the lunch area, I'm going to request you all to please join us back in the ballroom. I also remind our speakers and those delegates that have an accreditation which has a red tag, please ensure you occupy the tables in the second row. I'm going to repeat, delegates who have an accreditation which has a red tag, please ensure you're occupying tables which are in the second row. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be starting very shortly. All right. We're going to be starting with a panel discussion which is going to revolve around the topic, a perspective on risk and vulnerabilities for coastlines, coastal cities and climate change. Let me welcome on stage our esteemed speakers. Some of our speakers are going to be joining us online through video conferencing. Please welcome Mr. SVR Srinivas, Metropolitan Commissioner, MMRDA. He's going to be joining us online. I also welcome on stage India Head, United Nations Environment Program, UNEP, Dr. Atul Bagai, Professor IIT Bombay, Professor D. Parthasarthi. Professor Parthasarthi will be joining us virtually. I also welcome Program Lead, Risks and Adaptation, Council on Energy, Environment and Water, CEEW, Mr. Abhinash Mohanty. Also joining us online is Member National Disaster Management Authority, Mr. Krishna S. Vats, Senior Fellow and Director, Earth Science and Climate Change Division, TERI, Ms. Suruchi Bharwal, and Chair on Environmental Economics and Head, Environmental and Resource Economics Unit, Institute of Economic Growth, Professor Purnamita Das Gupta. Our speakers are going to be joining us online. Those speakers present here, I'm going to request you all to join us on stage. This discussion is going to be moderated by former Director CSIR NEERI, Dr. Rakesh Kumar. Ladies and gentlemen, just before we start this session, may I please request everybody to please give our speakers a round of applause. Can we do that? This is also a part of an exercise to kind of, let a little bit of lethargy go away. Sometimes a lot of my speakers have said that post-lunch sessions can be very, very tricky. So I'm going to request all of you all to kind of keep yourselves very, very interested, keep yourselves very, very attentive. We have a very interesting discussion coming up. Over to you, sir.
Thank you and good afternoon to everyone here again. Two things, of course, the afternoon session is going to be difficult for the lunch reason, and also I find the temperature is too low, which can actually force people to get out of the room. So my request, I have requested personally also to the organizers here, to get the temperature right so that our carbon footprint is better. I would not say zero, but it's better. In this session, we have actually very esteemed speakers, and I would not take too much of time, but since I have been given the task of moderating, just wanted to make few statements before we start this session. We are talking about climate change vulnerability and risk-related issues. What is important here to understand that when recent IPCC released this document of what you call it, summary for policymakers, it is very important to know